Welcome again to Birds of a Feather. It's your girl AJ, the Suburban Princess here, feeling very tormented, as you can see. It is lunch break. I'm probably not supposed to be potting right now, but I don't care because I have many thoughts and only so much time to do it. Uh, as you can see, I have changed up alliances since we know that the MVP will not be coming from Philadelphia. The MVP will be Lamar Jackson from the Ravens, number 8. So as of right now, I'm not acknowledging my own squad because infuriating to watch a team that can just mail it in so obviously and so carelessly that it irks you to your nerves that this is how they're going to operate next Monday night, unfortunately, when they play a playoff game versus the Bucks. Now, Tampa Bay barely got their win in to win the South 9-0 this past Sunday, but it doesn't make me think that they're going to play with any less vigor or conviction next Monday night in their home state of Tampa, Florida, um, against the Eagles. Because even if the Eagles did beat them, which someone just reminded me on the website on social media that they did beat the Bucks in Week 3, but even if they did beat the Eagles early, I mean, even if they did beat the Bucks early this year, meaning the Eagles, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to come full throttle. This is a different team, and now they are down 2 more birds. Now, mind you, AJ Brown went down with a knee injury, but he was walking off, so I think he's fine. And there has been no, as of right now, as of 1 o'clock, I have not heard any major issues with his knee. In fact, he was the one that was greeting all the players coming back into the locker room at the end of the game, which is another thing that annoys me because apparently AJ Brown was a very hot topic for most of December, as we know. We both discussed how, AJ Brown has felt very victimized by the media. And I have been very public on my tweets and very public on my social media about how the fact that I don't like AJ Brown popping off to people on Twitter, just like I didn't like any football player popping back at us 9 to 5 people who are just on Twitter because it's there. It's an easy thing to talk crap on. You don't have to mind it if you make more money than us, because at the end of the day, you play something that we don't play. Okay. I don't care if you've played, varsity football or whatever. You are not a pro at the moment. Okay. So any of these players complaining about how they come off is ridiculous because it's a waste of energy. You need to be saving all that energy at Brian Johnson, at your coach, at your defensive coach, even, because clearly the issue is the coordinators. All season, this team has not played with any real conviction. Even if they've won games, they barely won them. Everyone keeps talking about how the slide started after 10-1. I don't even think the slide started then. We were convinced in the first 3 games that they were not playing the same way that they had been playing, which is going to happen when you switch major coordinators and when you don't have the players that helped you win and get you to the Super Bowl in the first place last year. So clearly what we're not being real with ourselves as fans is that things are going to change year by year. What I hate is that we can't keep the same players that do help because of contracts. That's what I've always hated about this team. That's what I've hated about this organization, is that they can never keep the guys that actually help them win because they're not understanding that you can't just let players go just because of money. If they honestly contribute to the dream, you should find any and every way to keep them. If some of the veterans who aren't contributing anymore aren't doing it, cut them, release them. I don't care if they're a fan favorite. If they're not helping the team and harming them, it should be a no-brainer by the end of the season. Now, mind you, contract works different. I know that I don't know the basics, and I know it's not that easy. But what I'm saying is most of the players that they could have kept this season, they could have just let them slide with giving them a little more money. As much as I couldn't stand CJ Gardner as far as how he conducted himself on social media, again, going back to AJ, same thing. Don't pop off. It's a waste of energy. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We're just going with what our eyes are showing us and what allegedly they're saying on Twitter, which we do not know for a fact. We're just reacting on what they're giving us. You shouldn't waste your time trying to convince faceless people on Twitter with your time that you are a good player. AJ Brown has always been a good player. That's why we wanted him here. So I was only mad about that as far as him wasting his time trying to prove to us that he is not who he says he is. I don't think anyone has doubted his character. And those who have probably had a beef with him from leaving Tennessee, or those who just like to be trolls, don't waste your energy. I know it's easier said than done. I know that we all have feelings. But at the end of the day, I'm not wasting my time tweeting with people who don't know me. Okay? Jalen doesn't do it. Goddard doesn't do it. None of those players do it because, one, they don't have time, and they're just probably too tired to even bother. Once you know the background of the city, you'll understand that we're going to react to everything, just like we're doing today, just like we're going to do until Monday, just like we're going to do after Monday, because that's what we do as the community, as the fans, as the spectators. And those in the media know they have to work off of what you give them. Okay. So that's never going to change. So we just let that go. But the reason why I'm showing my alliance now to the Ravens is because they've always been my backup team. I've been rooting for Lamar since he got drafted because of the way how he got drafted. Because a lot of these things that people don't realize is that mentality of deciding that a player is not worthy enough to be in a first round has a lot to do with also perception. And Lamar Jackson has had to fight that he is not just a running back since he got drafted. So I admire the fact that he has consistently been trying to work on his QB prowess, and he has stayed in the pocket amongst obviously running because that's his gift, but he's also learned how to be a total QB in the years that he's been in the NFL. That's why I root for Lamar. Okay. I know he's not my home team, and I'm not one of these like wannabe uh Cowboy fans who live in Philly. I'm just one of these people who understands effort and I understand consistency. Okay. That does not mean I will never wear my Jalen Hurts t-shirt again because I've loved him being here ever since the second year. Okay. Because I saw growth in him. As much as it was a shock and I still wanted to be mad about Carson Wentz and that whole situation, I realized that it was for the best after a while. And Jalen shut me up when they got so good that they got to the Super Bowl within his third season. So to me, it was a no brainer. This year, I'm just more mad because now we're starting to see all the holes that they tried to cover up with the players that they have kept this year and the players that they have let go. There were certain deals that should have been in negotiation. CJ Gardner Johnson was a part of a core that could have grown with him. Okay. I didn't care whether Slade stayed or not. If Slade didn't stay, I was fine with that. Because I looked at it from the perspective of if he's not willing to take what how he's given him at this point, knowing that there's no reason for him at his age to want to go to another team and finish his career at this point, because we've kind of always wanted Slay as fans since he was in Detroit, but it just didn't work. So if he's going to give what he's going to give, then if he stays or goes, it's purely on him. So I didn't really have an opinion, I didn't really care because at this point I looked at it from a perspective of they've never seemed to have been able to get the DB core right. There's never been the right mix. I was even fine with them even keeping Rodney McLeod. But at this point, we see, Rodney just got hurt again being on the Cleveland Browns. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean he's not a good player. But as far as size and things that work out for that core that seems to never ever match up correctly since the days of Brian Dock and Jeremiah Trotter, you kind of have to keep who has consistently been an addition to this team and less of a subtraction. Okay. Um, Avonte Maddox, I understand he's had nothing but injuries, but when he has been on there and has been consistent, he's been effective. It just hasn't been for a long stretch of time. So I understand if they don't decide to renew him once his re-up contract is up or whatever. I understand that. But I also do think he is an important part of that team as well. So something has to be worked out that they at least hold on to him because they know they're not going to be able to replace this whole core ever. You know, I don't know what Howie does, but at this point, I think something in him has to change because even though they have seen drastic improvements on the defensive front four, I just feel like now at this point, the coordinator issue has purely exposed everything that's been lacking on this team since last year. Even with the big boys from Georgia, we have seen some decline with them as well. I'm sure that's mostly fatigue. I'm sure it's also just because, the way the season has cracked out, even the teams they should be beating, they were losing, which shows to me that there has been a lot of issues of gap control. There's been issues of middle of the field, which is where every team, even the bad teams, have beaten this team. They should have never lost to Seattle. They should have never lost to Dallas, and they should have never lost to the Giants. So at this point now, everything that gets exposed is going to continue to be exposed unless they plug those issues up. And until they do, this is how the defense is going to roll. Okay. Fletcher Cox is most likely probably not going to come back. BG most likely won't come back. I'm even going as far as to say Kelsey might be done for real this time. Because at this point, how much more can you continue when you do not know how the total core on both sides of the ball are going to be? Excuse me. There is an issue with Howard. Howard, excuse me, Howie. There is an issue with him being able to understand why it's important now to break that whole linebackers aren't that important mentality. That died with Andy Reid leaving, as far as I'm concerned. That should have never returned. I don't know if Skip was part of that too. I don't know that whole thing because I could care less about the whole Skip era because that came and went. But Sirianni's era could come and go too if they don't understand that certain issues just have to be addressed. I don't care how you do it, make it make sense. And I'm thinking that's what you get paid for in the front office. And for the fact that your team has always been this close every freaking game this year is just as annoying as if you just lost and just was like a foreign, a foreign 14 team or whatever. I'd rather you just be totally bad instead of always being close every freaking game or just winning by 3 points or winning by a point or winning by a touchdown. That means that there are certain issues that need to be addressed that you're just not addressing, and it's all coming down to money. When you can restructure contracts and you can up contracts so you can get these other free agents, you have to ask yourself, was it worth getting Shaq Leonard if he wasn't going to do anything, especially trying to prevent people out in the end zone? If he's another Robert Quinn, which I'm thinking right now he's looking like he's turned out to be too, because of whatever issue took him out of that game last weekend, all he had to do was block somebody the right way, then you need to reevaluate what a free agent is, who is worth a contract and who's not. I personally want the guy from Green Bay, Jair Alexander. I want him to come to the Eagles next year. I just like him. He just seems like such uh, just a way out character, just kind of just wacky. He's been doing a lot of random stuff lately for Green Bay, but I'm sure he's probably tired of sucking. And I'm sure even though now that they've gotten into the playoffs, which was a lot of luck for them, and obviously some late season winning, but they were honestly part of that last part of the last seeds that got in there. So it doesn't necessarily mean Green Bay is going to still be good. I just don't think they should move on from Jordan Love at this point. They have something to build on, but I personally don't even think it's Jordan Love necessarily. I think it might be the coach, but we don't know. That stuff is never clear because you have to give stuff a chance. And I understand that, which is why I don't think they should fire Sirianni, but I will not be shocked if they do. If they have somebody else they already are thinking of. Because if Bieniemy stays in Washington and he doesn't come here, because some people just don't think he's a good coach. I don't know. Washington pretty much almost whooped the Eagles' ass twice this year. You know what I mean? Sam Howell was doing a pretty bang up job against the Eagles until he wasn't. So, and they almost won that. The Washington almost won that first matchup with the Eagles, mind you. And I don't even look back now. I'm just going to make sure throughout the day, I'm going to make sure I go back and look at the highlights from each game because every game had a potential to go down another way. And that's why I say this team doesn't make me feel hopeful now that they've gotten through these last 5 games. And I don't even even with what Goddard said, I understand it's not right to have attitude that they mentally were already in another place after they found out they clinched. You still have to win every fucking game, dude. I don't care. And I don't even blame Goddard for trying to even say that and be honest, because he barely got the ball this year. You know what I mean? Jalen almost overthrew him in the last game. And if Dallas hadn't held on and pointed his damn toes, that would have been a missed catch. He would have been out of bounds, really. But the point is, Jalen has a momentum about him that he seems to forget certain people are included in that plan. And that's the only thing I'm starting to hate about, not hate, dislike about Hurts. Because what I'm really starting to see is that he has people in mind. And this was something Wentz did too that people seem to gloss over. When Wentz wanted to see where Ertz was, he always went to Ertz. That used to irk us too at some point after a while because it seemed like nobody else existed. The problem with Hurts is if AJ's down, he's still trying to throw deep passes when Quez is out there. I'd rather you have thrown to OZ. You know what I mean? I don't know why he didn't find Zacchaeus, but he found Quez all the damn time this last game. I mean, good for Quez that he got some catches. I'm sure that was good for his mental to know that Jalen still sees him because he had no choice because AJ went down. But at the end of the day, if Quez was still there and AJ was, do you really think Quez is going to see the ball? No. We already saw that in that one game. I forget what it was. I think it was either the Tampa game. It was one of those cold, rainy games because they had so many cold, rainy games. But it was one of those games where Quez was clearly in the end zone and he was the only one really open. And Hurts still didn't throw it to him. So at the end of the day, we all know as fans, we say that Quez would have dropped it anyway. I look at it from the perspective of you got to give somebody that shot, even if you don't want to give it to him. And I sure as hell wasn't shocked that he didn't. But at the end of the day, that just tells you one thing about Hurts. He has in his mind who he can rely on, and he stays there. And I get it. That's one of the continuities about being a QB that can also be your Achilles heel because You not seeing Goddard being open at times is a problem. You not seeing Kenny G being open is a problem. Dallas has never been one of them guys who's always consistently dropped the ball. Okay. He's dropped some here and there, but at the same time, I don't think he's the one you have to be like, I don't think that Goddard's going to get this. Anytime it's because he got covered viciously, which they didn't call one flag, which I think that was kind of obvious he got PI or whatever, but they didn't call it. But there are times that Goddard doesn't turn around quick enough. Okay, that's fine. But now he's been quick on the drop. And at this point, Jalen was like, nah, I don't want to go in the middle of the field. I want to go deep. I mean, if you watch Josh Allen play last night, pretty much turn into a crackhead halfway through that game and then finally reel it back in, you can tell that's just an QB's mentality. I want to go deep every time. I want to go. I want to go. That's fine. But sometimes you have to check down. Sometimes you have to throw to your tight end. Mind you, his tight end Dawson was cooking last night. So yeah, Josh didn't have a problem throwing to Dawson. But I really do think with Jalen, he has this thing. He has not really depended on a lot of other guys outside of AJ and Devonta. And that annoys me because you depended on these same dudes last year. What is the difference? The only difference is between Quez and Zacchaeus because Zacchaeus wasn't here last year or he wasn't on the field last year. But at the end of the day, there are just things that Jalen has to admit. You have to stop doing that because in the playoffs, if Zacchaeus is open, you got to try him, motherfather. Okay? If Goddard is open, you got to throw to Goddard. That's just something you have to get over. They're never going to always be the brothers out there. You have to throw to all your people, you know? And I never want to actually act like he's just always doing that on purpose, but sometimes it fucking feels like it because I'm sitting here looking at Goddard like well, he was open. I don't know how many times I see tweets every game this year that has been like, you missed KG wide open. Devonta was wide open. Goddard was right in your fucking face. And then he had to admit it when they finally asked him, did you not see Kenny Gainwell? It was 2 games ago. And he said, no, I didn't. Because in his mind, I wasn't throwing there. But I get it. You have moments where he can't trust the pocket, so he gets happy feet. I see that too. But again, the O line really wasn't even most of the problem this year. Even when they were shaky, they weren't shaky as much as he probably mentally and physically, psychosomatically was thinking. And that was causing him to always run out the pocket. So he has trust issues still. That's something he still has to learn in his young mind. I mean, granted, he's only 24, 25. So at this point, he's still got learning to do. So all those who never really liked him to begin with, tough noogies. He's still our quarterback, and I still believe in him. But he irked the shit out of me this year. I ain't gonna even lie. Because there were times that I just felt like Hurts just gonna just do his fucking thing no matter what. He has a mentality. It's locked and loaded from when he was in college. And there are certain things that have worked for him that he's probably never going to change because they have worked. But I agree with Sirianni having that same mentality as well. He's just going to go with it because he's going to say, what am I going to do? I can't tell him to not do something when his instinct is to throw it there. The most I can tell him is 9 times out of 10, that's going to work. Well, tell him at that moment, you have to have another option, even at that split second. I'm sorry. They say take what the defense gives you, right? But I feel like at this point, it doesn't even matter what the fuck what gives him. And I do not think that Jalen cannot read defenses, obviously, because they've gone further for someone who can't read defenses. I'm sorry. So screw you, Carr. At the end of the day, some stuff just doesn't work. Okay. But we're at this point now where even the defense had to be looked at as sus because even our heroes were starting to lose grace with us, with Carter kind of disappearing, with Jalen, excuse me, I'm sorry, Jordan Davis getting outed because of his weight issues. But I'm looking at him like he's a big guy no matter whether he's thinner or bigger or not. The issue is he able to hold up his end of the bargain getting more snaps this year? Because if that's the case, they gave them time to kind of wean them into the defense this year. And to me, Jalen Carter was the only one who seemed to not have an issue, period. He may have had 1 or 2 games where he was out because of his back, which to me, in a position like that, you're going to have back spasms, you're going to have back issues because you're constantly having to push on dudes and play back and forth, tug of war all the time. Jordan Davis, I never thought he was an issue, but apparently it was like attack Jordan Davis articles last week because of his weight, whether or not he's really, worthy of all the snaps he got this year, but he's not a rookie anymore. So now they're going to give him fair play just like they do with all the other players when they're starting to fall off. But I'm not worried about them. What I'm worried about is all those guys in the back who can't support the front as far as the defensive line. And that has still been an issue for years, and I don't know how they can continue to ignore it because that's where the slide has started. Every freaking opposing player QB has been able to spot all the issues, and that's why Saquon went to town last night. You know, Saquon couldn't do that much the first matchup, but for some reason he just went ham last night, as he should have. I mean, they pretty much lost this game already from like the first quarter on, which is a more embarrassing because Mariota had to be thrown in there, and he looked just as skitsy as he did in preseason. You know, and I hate to say it, but knowing that Mariota was that guy that we all dreamed of around the Skip era, we didn't get him. Something with him mentality, he maybe never had it. Maybe we thought he did, but he never had it. In all the years that he's backed up in Tennessee and the Raiders, and I forget what other team, maybe even Atlanta, I just feel like at this time, like he is not what you think he is. And I would rather have the third stringer be Jalen's reliable backup because he has the height and he definitely has the timing as far as when he throws his passes. So I don't know if they decide not to, for some reason, not roll with Justin in Chicago. Maybe he should come over here and be a backup because he might have that same mobility that Hurts has, and he might be that guy that be able to fill in the pieces if Hurts goes down next year. I mean, if he's willing to be humble enough to not be a starter, like Carson Wentz apparently had to do last night with the Rams, he pretty much brought them into a winning position last night for the first time in years. So maybe if he's willing to humble himself and actually be a backup instead of a starter next year, I would say bring on Justin. Bring on Justin Fields from Chicago. Have him come behind here. But we got to get some new coaches because whatever is causing Hurts to go backwards, just like what happened with Wentz in his 6th or 7th year, or yeah, I think that at this point we need to stop the bleeding now before Hurts starts, going back into worse habits than he's starting to develop now with these coordinators now. I don't miss Gannon. Steichen, fine. But at this point, I think Steichen had a rightful reason to want to be a coach. I don't think Gannon is a coach. I think that game with Arizona was just because we didn't scheme correctly, period. And he exposed everything that he knew that they lacked when he was on the team. So I don't think that makes him a good coach because they still were like they became 4-11 where they used to be, or 4-13 or whatever. When they were 3, they became 4 because of us. So if he seems to turn it around next year with Kyler starting, fine. But I don't see them being much of a threat. I'm sure I'll be wrong because I don't know anything. But at the same time, I'm not worried about Gannon as a coach. I'm more worried about Steichen because I do see the Colts getting better when they get Andrew back. Anthony Richardson back in full form next season. So as far as them leaving the nest and progressing outside of Sirianni, I'm more worried about Steichen. So I could be wrong, and as far as running back core, if we keep Kenny for another year or whatever, or if we don't bring him back, I'm fine with that. I really think they should sign DeAndre. I would even love if James Conner came here, but that's just not personal eye candy value. But I honestly do feel like they do need to beef up that core because as much as we love Boston Scott, the fact that they didn't even give him a chance to try to be the giant killer last night just showed me another thing that they're maybe tired of using him because they used him in punt return and he didn't even get anywhere. So I think the motivation totally dropped by the second half of this game, whereas I thought maybe they could possibly use Mariota earlier because I think even before Hurts broke his finger, and apparently the news flashes, he did not fracture it. He just popped it out of it, dislocated, was able to go back in. Swelling will go down. He's fine. He didn't even seem like he was even really that miserable, to tell you the truth. If he did have pain, they didn't pick it up on the cameras. And he definitely didn't seem bothered by it in the presser. So he'll be fine. AJ was fine, obviously. I just think he got banged up on the turf, and I think that's another reason why he was down for a while. But I don't think they should have continued to play him at that point anyway, because after that, before that, which we found out later I was really mad about, was Sidney Brown busting up his knee, and now he has an ACL, and he's out for the year. So that's just nice and wonderful for special teams as well as having substitutes for the DBs. So my poor Sidney, I wish him well. I know he's going to rehab like crazy. but I really, really wanted him to get a chance to keep starting as much as he could, but whatever. I think he'll still be an asset later next year, maybe when the team starts to reform after they've acclimated from all their new additions that they're going to have next season, because they will. Um, I mean, honestly, at this point, I don't feel like Kelsey should even stress himself mentally or physically for this team for another year. I just feel like it's time to move on and get uncodependent or get less dependent, less codependent, sorry, on some of these veterans, because it's just time. This team needs more time. And this team is definitely not going to keep riding on this, we can go back to the Super Bowl wave at this point, because once you don't make it the year that you have that shot, that's pretty much it. It's very rare that you get to go back. The stats have already shown that most people who are 1-5 in the last part of regular season, they usually do not win in the playoffs. So I've already mailed it in. That's why I'm rooting for Lamar and the Ravens, because they are having a surge at the correct time in the postseason. So I wish nothing but the best for the Ravens. I want him to get his MVP and I want him to win. I want him to go to Vegas. Um, and if so be it, if San Francisco represents the NFC, so be it. Whatever. Whatever. The dream was I wanted Lamar and Hurts to be in the Super Bowl together because I thought that would be great. But they're just not good enough. That's the bottom line. And the mentality in this locker room, you can't tell me any different, is definitely down. No matter what they've said in the pressers, there's nothing that they can cover for mailing it in for 6 games straight. That pisses me off as a fan. I feel bad for the fans that traveled, and I feel bad for every fan that has to face the reality that they probably weren't giving it their all like they said they were. Or if they were, that's how bad they've become. Because even if they won those 10 games on fluke circumstances, it's just the fact that the effort was definitely more there than it was now. So you can't convince me that these last 6 games were just, they were just better. No, y'all didn't care last night. And that was obvious. So now we got to sit there and watch y'all play like y'all care on Monday night when y'all really don't. But again, y'all make more money than me. So y'all can sell us a bridge and build it. But a lot of fans are basically saying, don't piss on us and tell us it's raining. Because at this point, we know it's over. So fly, Eagles, fly, but wrap it up because we're over it. So go Phillies. We know that it's going to be a dramatic next 3-4 months because, we didn't get the prospects we wanted as far as the Phillies fans. So I don't know what they're going to do now, but it is what it is. Just hope that Trey and Bryce realize they don't have to swing at everything this year. That's probably the only thing I can hope for. They switch up the roster, and I don't know. Maybe they need a mentality boost as well at this point. There's just other ways to approach a winning team, and it doesn't have to be stick to what you know best. It can be sometimes take a shot, try something different, change up your swing, stop swinging at air. I don't know if the Castellanos is still going to stay with the team. I don't know if he's up for re-up or if I think they did re-up him, but if he comes back, I don't really care either. I'm more just always been kind of iffy. I'm glad he had a great comeback season, but it obviously didn't do much in the playoffs. But I think as a viewer, as a spectator, we're just tired of seeing the same stuff, different day, different year. Switch it up or just admit we're still trying to figure it out. Don't try to tell us that you're actually doing your best when we know you're not. Compared to what you just put out earlier, you're clearly not doing your best. You just really don't know what else to say. I know they're never going to change how the media is available to them multiple times a week after a loss, but I wish they could reduce that time too. I understand that media got to work and they got to write articles, but majority of the time they end up writing think pieces anyway because the players don't really give them anything to work with. So maybe the whole media approach needs to change, but I know that's not going to happen right away. Anyway, birds of a feather, lunch break let out. I had to let it out. It's your girl AJ Suburban Princess. My co-ed will be back. He has things Thea got to take care of. So birds of a feather, the co-ed edition will be back later in the week. Thanks for listening. If you weren't, oh well, fly Eagles fly. And talk to you soon.